Winchester rifle is a comprehensive term describing a series of lever-action repeating rifles manufactured by the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Evolved from the 1860 Henry rifle, Winchester rifles were among the earliest repeaters. The model 1873 was particularly successful, being colloquially known as the gun that won the West. Most popular of all was the model 1894, a new design by John Browning, widely adopted as a hunting rifle that saw production of over 6 million units before its domestic discontinuation 112 years later in 2006. It went back into production by Miracle Corp. in 2010. Predecessors. In 1848, Walter Hunt of New York patented his Volition repeating rifle, incorporating a tubular magazine, which was operated by 2 levers and complex linkages. The Hunt rifle fired what he called the rocket ball, an early form of caseless ammunition in which the powder charge was contained in the bullet's hollow base. Hunt's design was fragile and unworkable, but in 1849 Lewis Jennings purchased the Hunt patents and developed a functioning, if still complex, version which was produced in small numbers by Robbins and Amp. Lawrence of Windsor, Vermont until 1852. Horace Smith and Daniel Wesson of Norwich, Connecticut acquired the Jennings patent from Robbins and Amp. Lawrence, as well as shop foreman Benjamin Tyler Henry. Smith made several improvements to the Jennings design, and in 1855 Smith and Wesson, together with several investors, formed a corporation, the Volcanic Repeating Arms Company, to manufacture Smith's modification of the Hunt Jennings, the volcanic lever-action pistol and rifle. Its largest stockholder was Oliver Winchester. For the volcanic rifle, Smith added a primer charge to Hunt's rocket ball, and thus created one of the first fixed metallic cartridges which incorporated bullet, primer and powder in one self-contained unit. While still with the company, Smith went a step further and added a cylindrical copper case to hold the bullet and powder with the primer in the case rim, thus creating one of the most significant inventions in firearms history, the metallic rim-fire cartridge. Smith's cartridge, the .22 short, would be introduced commercially in 1857 with the landmark Smith & Amp Wesson Model 1 revolver and is still manufactured today. The volcanic rifle had only limited success, which was partially attributable to the design and poor performance of the Hunt-derived volcanic cartridge, a hollow conical ball filled with black powder and sealed by a cork primer. Although the Volcanic's repeater design far outpaced the rival technology, the unsatisfactory power and reliability of the 25 and 32 caliber rocket balls were little match for the competitors' larger calibers. Wesson had left Volcanic soon after it was formed, and Smith followed 8 months later to create the Smith & Amp Wesson Revolver Company. Volcanic moved to New Haven in 1856, but by the end of that year became insolvent. Oliver Winchester purchased the bankrupt firm's assets from the remaining stockholders, and reorganized it as the New Haven Arms Company in April 1857. Benjamin Henry continued to work with Smith's cartridge concept, and perfected the much larger, more powerful 44 Henry cartridge. Henry also supervised the redesign of the rifle to use the new ammunition, retaining only the general form of the breech mechanism and a tubular magazine. This became the Henry rifle of 1860, which was manufactured by the New Haven Arms Company, and used in considerable numbers by certain Union Army units in the American Civil War. Confederates called the Henry "that damn janky rifle that they load on Sunday and shoot all week." Development. After the war, Oliver Winchester renamed New Haven Arms the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. The company modified and improved the basic design of the Henry rifle, creating the first Winchester rifle, the model 1866. It retained the 44 Henry cartridge, was likewise built on a bronze alloy frame, and had an improved magazine and a wooden forearm. In 1873 Winchester introduced the steel-framed Model 1873 chambering the more potent 44-40 centerfire cartridge. In 1876, in a bid to compete with the powerful single-shot rifles of the time, Winchester brought out the Model 1876. While it chambered more powerful cartridges than the 1866 and 1873 models, the toggle link action was not strong enough for the popular high-powered rounds used in Sharp's Remington single-shot rifles. From 1883, John Moses Browning worked in partnership with Winchester, designing a series of rifles and shotguns, most notably the lever-action Winchester Model 1886, Model 1892, Model 1894, and Model 1895 rifles, along with the lever-action Model 1887-1901 shotgun, the pump-action Model 1890 rifle, and the pump-action Model 1893-1897 shotgun. Winchester lever-action repeating rifles. Model 1866, the first Winchester rifle. The Winchester Model 1866 was originally chambered for the rimfire 44 Henry, nicknamed the Yellow Boy because of its receiver of a bronze-brass alloy called gunmetal. It was famous for its rugged construction and lever-action repeating rifle mechanism that allowed the user to fire a number of shots before having to reload. Nelson King's improved patent remedied flaws in the Henry rifle by incorporating a loading gate on the side of the frame and integrating a round-sealed magazine which was covered by a forestock. France purchased 6,000 Model 1866 rifles along with 4.5 million 44 Henry cartridges during the Franco-Prussian War. The Ottoman Empire purchased 45,000 Model 1866 muskets and 5,000 carbines in 1870 and 1871. These rifles were used in the 1877 Russo-Turkish War, causing much surprise when outnumbered Turks at the Siege of Plevna inflicted many times more casualties than their opponents armed with single-shot KRNKA and Burden rifles. The Model 1866 compelled Russians to develop a new rifle, the Mosin-Nagant, after the war. The Swiss Army initially selected the Model 1866 to replace their existing single-shot Milbank Amsler rifles. However, ensuing political pressure to adopt a domestic design resulted in the Vertley Model 1867, a bolt-action design utilizing a copy of the Winchester's tubular magazine, being adopted instead. Model 1873. The Model 1873 was one of the most successful Winchester rifles of its day, gaining the reputation as the gun that won the West. Still an icon in the modern day, it was manufactured between 1873 and 1919. Originally chambered for the 44-40 cartridge, it was later produced in 38-40 and 32-20, all of which were also popular handgun cartridges of the day, allowing users to carry just one type of ammunition. The Model 1873 was produced in three variations: a 24-inch barrel rifle, 20-inch barrel carbine, and a musket. The easy-to-transport and handle carbine was the most popular, while the musket accounted for less than 5 to 10% of total production. Due to feeding problems, the original Model 1873 was never offered in the military standard 45 Colt cartridge, although a number of modern reproductions are chambered for the round. The popularity of the original Model 1873 led Colt to manufacture a 44-40 version of the single-action Army revolver called the Frontier 6-shooter, to both celebrate celebrate and enhance the Model 1873's prestige, Winchester established a coveted 1 of 1,000 grade in 1875. Barrels producing unusually small groupings during test firing were fitted to rifles with set triggers and a special finish, marked 1 of 1,000. They sold for a then princely $100. A popular 1950 Western starring Jimmy Stewart, Winchester 73, was based on the coveted gun. Promotions included a search for 1 of 1,000 rifles by Universal Studios, with advertisements in sporting magazines and posters in sporting goods stores. A second grade of Model 1,873 barrels producing above average accuracy were fitted to rifles marked 1 of 100 and sold for $20 over list. Approximately 136 1 of 1,000 Model 1873s were sold, and only 8 1 of 100s. In all, over 720,000 Model 1873s were produced. Long unavailable, the rifle returned to production under license from the Olin Company in 2013, joining the Model 1892 and the Model 1894 being manufactured in Japan by the Miraku Corporation for FN Browning. The new 10-shot Model 1873 is only available with a 20-inch round barrel chambered in 357 Magnum 38 Special, nearly faithful in design to the original, including the trigger disconnect safety, sliding dust cover, and a crescent-shaped butt plate. It incorporates 2 safety improvements: a firing pin block preventing it from moving forward unless the trigger is pulled, and a cartridge carrier modification to eject used casings away from the shooter. Model 1876. The Winchester Model 1876, or Centennial model, was a heavier-framed rifle than the models 1866 and 1873, chambered for full-powered centerfire rifle cartridges suitable for big-game hunting, rather than the handgun-size rimfire and rimfire rounds of its predecessors. While similar in design to the 1873, the 1876 was actually based on a prototype 1868 lever-action rifle that was never commercially produced by Winchester. Introduced to celebrate the American Centennial Exposition, the Model 1876 earned a reputation as a durable and powerful hunting rifle. 4 versions were produced: a 22-inch barrel carbine, a 26-inch barrel express rifle with a half-length magazine, a 28-inch barrel sporting rifle, and a 32-inch barrel musket. Standard rifles had a blued finish while deluxe models were case-hardened. Collectors identify a first model with no dust cover, a second model with a dust cover rail fastened by a screw, and a third model with an integral dust cover. Total production was 63,871, including 54 1 of 1,000 Model 1876s and only 7 of the 1 of 100 grade. Originally chambered for the new 45 to 75 Winchester Centennial cartridge versions in 40 to 60 Winchester, 45 to 60 Winchester and 50 to 95 Express followed. The 76 in the latter chambering is the only repeater known to have been in widespread use by professional buffalo hunters. The Canadian Northwest Mounted Police used the 76 in 45 to 75 as a standard long arm for many years, with 750 rifles purchased for the force in 1883. The Mountie Model 76 carbine was also issued to the Texas Rangers. Theodore Roosevelt used an engraved pistol-gripped half-magazine 76 during his early hunting expeditions in the West and praised it. A 76 was also found in the possession of Apache warrior Geronimo after his surrender in 1886. The Model 1876 toggle link action receiver was too short to handle popular big game cartridges, including the 45-70, and production ceased in 1897, as big game hunters preferred the smoother Model 1886 action-chambered for longer and more powerful cartridges. Model 1886. The Model 1886 continued the trend towards chambering heavier rounds, and had an all-new and considerably stronger locking block action than the toggle-link Model 1876. It was designed by John Moses Browning, who had a long and profitable relationship with Winchester from the 1880s to the early 1900s. William Mason made some improvements to Browning's original design. In many respects, the Model 1886 was a true American Express rifle, as it could be chambered in the more powerful black powder cartridges of the day, such as the 45-70 government long Winchester Goal. The 1886 proved capable of handling not only the 45 Gov but also 45-90 and the huge 50-110 Express Buffalo cartridges, and in 1903 was chambered for the smokeless high-velocity 33 WCF. In 1935, Winchester introduced a slightly modified M1886 as the Model 71, chambered for the more powerful 348 Winchester cartridge. Model 1892 Winchester returned to its roots with the Model 1892, which, like the first lever-action guns, was primarily chambered for shorter, lower-pressure handgun rounds. The Model 1892 incorporates so much stronger Browning action than the earlier Henry-derived arms of the 1860s and 1870s. 1,004,675 Model 1892 rifles were made by Winchester, and although the company phased them out in the 1930s, replicas are still being made by the Brazilian arms maker Rossi, and by Chiappa Firearms, an Italian factory, in its modern form, using updated materials and production techniques. The Model 1892's action is strong enough to chamber high-pressure handgun rounds, such as 357 Magnum, 44 Magnum, and 454 Casual. The Winchester 92 was commonly used in Hollywood Western movies and TV shows as a substitute for the Winchester 66 and 73 models because of its similar appearance, while being cheaper and easier to acquire. Model 1894. The John Browning-designed Winchester Model 1894 is the most prevalent of the Winchester repeating rifles. The Model 1894 was first chambered for the 32-40 cartridge, and later a variety of calibers such as 25-35 WCF, 30-30, 32 Winchester Special, the 38-55 Winchester. Winchester was the first company to manufacture a civilian rifle chambered for the new smokeless propellants, and although delays prevented the 30-30 cartridge from appearing on the shelves until 1895, it remained the first commercially available smokeless powder round for the North American consumer market, though initially it was too expensive for most shooters. The Model 1894 went on to become one of the best-selling hunting rifles of all time. It has the distinction of being the first sporting rifle to sell over 1 million units, ultimately selling over 7 million before U.S. production was discontinued in 2006. The Winchester 30-30 configuration is practically synonymous with deer rifle in the United States. In the early 20th century, the rifle's designation was abbreviated to Model 94, as was done with all older Winchester designs still in production. Model 1895. The Winchester Model 1895 has the distinction of being the first Winchester lever-action rifle to load from a box box magazine instead of a tube under the barrel. This allowed the Model 1895 to be chambered for military cartridges with Spitzer projectiles, and the rifle was used by the armed forces of a number of nations including the United States, Great Britain, and Imperial Russia. The Russian production models could also be loaded using charger clips, a feature not found on any other lever-action rifle. Calibers included 30 to 40 Krag, 303 British, 3003 Springfield, 3006 Springfield, 7.62 x 54 mm art, and 405 Winchester. Theodore Roosevelt used a Model 1895 in 405 on African safaris and called it his medicine gun for lions. In 1908, the 1895 Winchester became the first commercially produced sporting rifle chambered in 3006. Introduced in 1955, 60 years after Winchester's last all-new lever-action design, the Model 88 was unlike any previous design. A short-throw lever operated of 3-lug rotating Bolton rounds were fed vertically from a detachable box magazine. These bolt-action features in a lever-action permitted the use of high-powered modern short-case cartridges with Spitzer bullets. .243 Winchester, 284 Winchester, 308 Winchester and 358 Winchester. The Model 88 was discontinued in 1973 and is the third best-selling lever-action rifle in Winchester's history, following only the M1894 and M1892. The later Sarco Thinwolf and Browning BLR have similar actions. Winchester's Model 9422 was introduced in 1972. It was designed to capture the image of the traditional lever actions with exposed hammer, straight grip, tube magazine and barrel bands. Unlike older Winchester lever actions, it came grooved for scope mounting. It was offered in 22 long rifle and 22 WMR and was priced at the high end of the 22 LR sporting rifle market. The 9422 action design was original and extremely reliable. The feed system handled the cartridge from the magazine to the breech face by its rim, and the slide cammed the rear of the breech block up into the locking recess. A concealed polymer buffer above the breech gave a firm-feeling lock-up and a very positive unlocking motion. The 9422 had worldwide appeal to customers raised on Western fiction and to parents looking for a way to introduce their children to shooting. Over the course of production, a higher finished model called the 9422 XDR, a 17 rimfire model, and several commemorative models were offered. Production ended in 2005. Winchester Model 1885 single-shot rifle. In 1885, Winchester entered the single-shot market with the Model 1885 rifle, which John Browning had designed in 1878. The Winchester single-shot, known to most shooters as either the low wall or high wall, depending on model, was produced to satisfy the demands of the growing sport of match shooting, excelling at it with Major Ned H. Roberts describing the Model 1885 single-shot as the most reliable, strongest, and altogether best single-shot rifle ever produced. Winchester produced nearly 140,000 single-shot rifles from 1885 to 1920, and it was found that the falling block Model 1885 had been built with one of the strongest actions known at the time. Winchester also produced a large number of single shots in .22 caliber rimfire for the U.S. Army as a marksmanship training rifle, the Winder musket. Winchester bolt-action rifles. Winchester lever-action rifles remained the most popular in the U.S. through World War I and the interwar period. However, advances in the development of bolt-action rifles made them increasingly preferred over lever actions. These new rifles, such as Maus's Gewehr 98 and the US M1903 Springfield, featured box magazines that could chamber pointed Spitzer bullets, which lever-action rifles with tubular magazines could not use for safety reasons. The most influential bolt-action designs, as developed by Mauser and other military manufacturers, had front-locking lugs, which both stabilized the cartridge head and strengthened the action. This allowed for ammunition to reach unprecedented velocities, increasing long-range accuracy while not compromising operator safety. The bolt action was also simpler and cheaper to manufacture than high-powered lever-action guns like Winchester's 1886 and 1895 models, making them extremely competitive in the marketplace. In response to the increasing competition from these bolt-action rifles, Winchester introduced the Winchester Model 54 in 1925. This was not Winchester's first bolt rifle, but it was by far the most successful to date. It was based indirectly on the Mauser Gewehr 98 design, but with modifications and popular North American chamberings such as the widely available .30-06 Springfield, which made it more appealing to American hunters than the European imports of sporturized military rifles. The Model 70 was developed from the Model 54, which it replaced in 1936. The Model 70, often dubbed the rifleman's rifle, was produced continuously at New Haven until 2006. Production was subsequently resumed at F.N. Hurstel's plant in Columbia, South Carolina. In 2013, assembly was moved to Portugal. In 1920, Winchester introduced the Model 52-22 bolt-action target rifle, which from its inception and for years thereafter was America's reference standard small-bore match rifle. A sporter model of this action was also made from 1934 to 59. Starting in 1900, Winchester also manufactured inexpensive single-shot, .22 bolt-action boys rifles, including the models 1900, 1902, 1904 and thumb-trigger, and mid-range, .22 bolt-action repeaters including the models 69, 72 and 75. Winchester semi-automatic rifles. Winchester models 1903 and 63. The Winchester Model 1903 was the first commercially available semi-automatic, .22 rimfire caliber in the United States. Designed by T.C. Johnson, the Model 1903 was chambered for the unique .22 Winchester automatic cartridge. In 1919, the Model 1903 moniker was shortened to Model 03, and following a partial redesign in the 1930s, was renamed the Model 63. The Model 63, introduced in 1933, was chambered for the popular and widely available .22 long rifle cartridge. It was initially made with a 20-inch barrel, then with a 23-inch barrel from 1936 until the end of production in 1958. About 175,000 Model 63 rifles were manufactured, with the last 10,000 having grooved receiver tops for scope mounting. Both the 1903-03 and the 63 have tubular magazines in the buttstock of the rifle and are loaded through a slot in the right side of the buttstock. Winchester models 1905, 1907, and 1910. The early centerfire Winchester self-loading series of rifles began with the Model 1905, chambered for the .32SL and .35SL cartridges. Following the demand for a higher-powered self-loading rifle, the models 1907 and 1910 were introduced along with the respective cartridges. The .351SL and 401 SL Winchester repeating shotguns. Winchester Model 1887-1901. The Winchester Model 1887 was the first successful repeating shotgun design, developed by John Browning and produced by Winchester from 1887 to 1920. Browning felt that a pump action would be much more appropriate for a repeating shotgun, but as Winchester was primarily a lever-action firearms company, they felt that the new shotgun must also be a lever-action for reasons of brand recognition. The M1887 was chambered for 12-gauge black powder shot shells, and after the switch to smokeless powder at the end of the 19th century, the M1901 was introduced, being chambered for 10-gauge smokeless shells. Although a technically sound gun design, the market for lever-action shotguns waned considerably after the introduction of the Winchester 1897 and other contemporary pump-action shotguns. Modern reproductions of the gun have been manufactured by Norinco in China, RD Limited in Australia, and Chiappa Firearms in Italy. Reproductions have sold particularly well in Australia on account of the National Firearms Agreement ban on pump-action and self-loading shotguns. Winchester Model 1893-1897. Another Browning design. The Winchester Model 1893 was the first successful pump-action shotgun design, as strengthened in 1897 for smokeless propellant shells. It remained in production until the mid-1950s. Unusual for a repeating shotgun, the Model 1897 could be taken apart for easier carriage, storage, and was available in a variety of barrel lengths from 20 to 36 inches. During World War I, it was issued as a trench gun, with short barrel, heat shield and bayonet. Winchester Model 1911. Winchester's long association with John Browning came to an end when the company refused to accept Browning's terms for the right to manufacture his revolutionary 1898 design for a self-loading shotgun. The landmark Browning Auto 5 was produced instead by Fabrique Nationale in Europe and later by Remington Arms in the US. However, Browning's semi-automatic patents had been so tightly drafted by Winchester's own lawyers that it took years for T.C. Johnson to develop a self-loading shotgun which didn't infringe them, resulting in the Model 1911 SL. The 1911 was a flawed and potentially dangerous design, and was not commercially successful. As a result, production ceased in 1925. Winchester Model 1912, designed by T.C. Johnson as an internal hammer modification of the Model 1897, the Model 1912 was one of the most successful pump shotguns ever made, with nearly 2 million produced before its cancellation in 1963. Like the Model 1897, it came in takedown form, and likewise was issued in trench gun and combat versions during both World Wars, Korea and Vietnam. The Model 12 was popular with the military, law enforcement, hunters, and sporting clay competitors, the latter regarding it as having superior balance and point among pump actions.